Ravens fans, I am joined by Ravens Director of Player Personnel Joe Hortiz here at the NFL Scouting Combine, and we want to dive into this year's draft class. So, Joe, when you take a look at this class, I know it's early in the process, but what stands out to you?
I'd say that there's a couple deep positions, but the depth through the draft is good. I think there's a little bit of mixed feel and rankings and orders at the top of the draft. Maybe it's not as deep up top, but once you get into later in the first round, I think you're going to get a comparable player that people will be taking in the mid to early first round, and then those players will gradually go down in the second and third rounds, but you're going to get good players in the middle rounds of this draft, and then certainly depth at the back of it. So I'd say it's a good deep draft this year, opportunity to get players in each round.
What are the positions of strength and weakness as you look at it and you evaluate this class?
I'd say, part of this draft does fit some of our needs. I think the skill players are good, wide receiver, corner, there's depth in both positions, and then certainly it's one position not of need, but tight ends are really deep class this year. So it's fun to see that position really starting to develop in college and them being able to put out players year after year.
So let's dive into the wide receiver conversation. I know this is obviously one that a lot of fans are interested in, and Daniel Jeremiah, a good friend of yours,
Sure.
Someone you know well, he talked about the receiver class and kind of talked about how he doesn't feel like it's as strong this year as we've seen in some past years. And there's not really a consensus necessarily on like who the best guy or two is.
Right.
What do you make of this receiver class?
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's deep. I think there's talent in the receiver class, and I think it's going to be that way. I've said it in past years. I think every year we're going to have options in the draft at wide receiver. In terms of the strength of it, I think it's when you have clearly defined a number one, a number two, a number three type ranking, it's easier to say it's a stacked class, but I think the players at the top, while there may be 5-10 different orders, if you ask 5 or 10 different people, I think they're all talented players, So I think there is depth at the position. I think there's talent at the position.
So oftentimes receivers go quick. I mean, last year 5 in the first 16 picks. And so these guys, there can just be a run on them that starts early.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then go back to 2019, and this reminds me of some of the things I'm hearing in 2019. Hollywood was the first receiver off the board. He went 25, and so that was a year where it waited. What is your expectation? Is this going to be a year where guys start to fly? Is this a year where maybe it waits a little bit before that first receiver goes off the board?
Yeah, I think every draft is different. I think every year you have to expect that receivers are going to start going earlier because of the investment being made in the position. I think when you look at free agency, the way the spending has been at wideout, teams are investing more and more capital in receivers. So I do think it is becoming more of a priority position through the draft and in free agency. So yeah, I do think their players will come off the board when it starts. When it ends, there's no telling. I think it's a good quarterback year, especially at the top of the draft. Last year, it wasn't as strong, so I think you'll have some more quarterbacks go earlier, which obviously will push other positions down.
So a couple of receivers I want to ask you about. If you look at the mocks, there's a lot who've been projected to the Ravens. Quentin Johnson from TCU, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. What's your evaluation of those guys?
Yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of different players mocked to us if they keep mocking receivers because, like you said, the different orders that everyone has. But, starting with Jackson, talented player last year in 2021, highly productive, played with 2 great players on the outside. He manned the slot. He's played primarily in there, but he has the skill set to play outside. Really instinctive player, excellent hands, strong physical runner after the catch. Just a really good feel for work in space. We call it, spatial awareness. Just knows how to get open, knows how to set up routes, and then knows how to finish in terms of catching and getting upfield and gaining after the catch. And then Quentin, big outside guy, really jumped out this year. He's been a somewhat productive player over the past 2 years before this year. He's been good this year. He really popped on the scene. Big, physical, athletic. He's got really good speed, and for a taller receiver, really good athleticism. You can see it in his route running ability. So both intriguing guys, kind of fit different spots on an offense, but I think they also have a little bit of flexibility to move outside for Quentin, inside, and then obviously with Jackson, he's more of a slot, but he's got the skill set to play outside.
All right, let's flip over to the other side of the ball, cornerback. This is a position where you could end up addressing. You've had a lot of success at drafting cornerbacks, especially in the first round. Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith. You go through the history of the Ravens. When you look at this class, 2 guys who have been mentioned, One is Joey Porter Jr., and a familiar name there.
Sure.
A lot of battles against his dad when he was in Pittsburgh. And also Deontay Banks, a local kid from Maryland. What do you make of this cornerback class and those two guys in particular?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a deep class, and I think there's talent in the first round. There's talent in the second, third rounds where you'll be able to address that position if the opportunity presents itself. Speaking specifically of those two, Joey, obviously both of them were pretty close by, so we get a chance as scouts to see them play live. But Joey's a long, athletic corner, very good ball skills, really good feel and instincts for the position, plays a mix of zone and man. You'll see him press, play off, but just a really good feel for concepts that he's going against, and tough to throw over and around because of his length. And you also see the competitiveness in him, as you would expect, being Joey Porter's son. But he'll come up and support the run, and just a good football player who's done well at Penn State. And then with Tay, he's a guy that physical, athletic, explosive speed, plays a lot of press there at Maryland, can play off, but he's really active and competitive, takes pride in covering players. But then when he's got to come up and support the run, he'll do it. You'll see him fire up and take on backs and certainly get receivers down. So both talented players that it's fair to get the praise that they've received.
Outside linebacker, another interesting spot. What do you make of this group? And another that's a spot where you've had a ton of success mid to late rounds. Zadarius Smith and Matthew Judon, jump out as some mid to late round. And what do you make of that pass rusher group in this class?
That's another deep position. It's headlined by Will up top. And there's a lot of good players with talent up top. And then
don't think Will Anderson's going to be there when we're
I doubt he'll be there. Yeah. So but really, the great thing about us is our outside backers are versatile and they fill different roles. So we can take those 4-3 ends in college and say, what does he do well? So when you talk about a Judon and Zadarius and our later round successes, it's okay, what's he do well right now? And what can he get better at? And how's he fit our system? We like guys that can set the edge and rush the passer. So I think, when we look at these players, especially in the later rounds, we're trying to identify the one thing they offer to the Ravens, and can we build on that? So that's, I think, one of the reasons we've had success, because we find guys that we like and feel like they can do something positive for us and will grow the rest of their game. And so that's our approach, and it's worked out so far for us.
So in the past few years on draft weekend, you've had a ton of picks, and it's just been chaos, with all those picks.
It's not chaos. We love it.
It's chaos for us.
It's chaos for you.
Exactly.
Believe you me, Eric has the plan in there, and we're organized and ready to roll with each name.
Yeah, we don't know that plan. That's the challenge. And so it's a bit chaotic, but this year that's not going to be the case as it stands right now. Only 5 draft picks, which is strange. It's a unique situation. How does that affect draft strategy, and also how does it affect the potential of a trade? If you wanted to move up, you don't really have the ammunition necessarily to do it as you did in past years. So just how does that affect the overall strategy this year?
Yeah, the strategy is always fluid, I think, every year. And even when you have a ton of picks, you'll see us trade back even when we have a lot of picks and pick up more. We may use some of those picks to, in a swap. But I'd say having 5 picks, obviously what we're used to, that's not what we're accustomed to, but it puts pressure on the scouting staff, our scouts, and all of us, and really the organization, hey, we got to nail every one of these picks, and we feel that way every year. When we have 10 picks, we want to nail all 10 picks, but when you're down to 5, it's hey, these are critical decisions for us. But you never know how the draft's going to unfold, we have a way of turning 5 into 7, 7 into 9. So, if we get an opportunity to make a trade, great. If not, we'll be ready to pick.
All right, Joe, so thanks so much. We appreciate your perspective on this class and these prospects. So appreciate the time, and enjoy the rest of the week here in Indy.
Thanks.